Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Pike Homestead. So this one, I think I'm just gonna kind of walk around a little on the farm and talk a little about something that both Caroline and I have experienced, and actually has a major impact on what led us to come here in the first place, or at least what led me to be ready to come here in the first place. And a lot of it has to do with mental health and certain things I was experiencing, and what we've kind of figured out is a cause of that Caroline's figured out in some of her research in looking into this. And she's going to be touching on that in her own video. We'll link to that in the description below, so be sure to check it out because it will add kind of a different, texture to what we're talking about. Now, I've been meaning to talk about my mental health on this for quite a while. Because again, it was a major impetus in driving my decision to come and make this big change in our lives and take the step now to be living this life here and giving up the safety and security of the stable union job I was working. Like a lot of people, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of anxiety, stress, depression. But these are things that I don't know if I'm particularly prone to. I've suffered from anxiety and stress through a lot of my life, just not to that level. For those of you that don't know, my mother was killed by cancer when I was 9 years old. And that's left its mark, and it's definitely, it was something that I thought had been left behind, that I'd grown up with and gotten accustomed to and everything. That in my experiences over the last, 2 years now, has definitely shown me that it wasn't necessarily as non-impactful a thing as I, assumed it was. It's always there, and these certain scars and tendencies, I guess, are there, and it links directly to a lot of that, but never to this degree. Like, I had social anxieties, right? So where at work, if I needed to contact a vendor or something to source a part, my preference I'd either avoid it or I'd try to contact them via email. I was just more comfortable communicating that way. And it wasn't the fact that I'd be stressed out or unable to do it once I was doing it. So if I called someone on the phone, I'd be fine. It would just be the anxiety leading up to it that would make me kind of avoid it. It's something that had been growing worse and worse. And there are certain things going on, in the midst of the pandemic that weren't actually related to the pandemic. Relationship with certain managers and stuff at my job. And just let's just say the amount of extra work I was taking on to make things keep running smoothly at the university for our department, it was definitely leaving me emotionally exhausted and drained, and I just couldn't go back. The stress and anxiety that I was experiencing made it impossible for me to continue doing that, even though I was working by myself, which, with my history of anxiety, I prefer to be kind of doing my own thing. I prefer to be able to just go out and get a job done and just do it. That's one of the things I still struggle with here. Like, I should be involving the kids more in a lot of what I do, but I'd rather just get it done and not deal with the hassle sometimes. And that's my continued battle here. So anyway, this is something that had been growing and growing and growing, and it led us to coming to Alberta and then buying the farm and living this life that was, originally 5 years off down the road, but it was something that was probably going to always be 5 years off down the road, given the way my emotional state works. I never actually reached that, low point of self-harm or anything like that, but, I'm also a type 1 diabetic. Right, so I have this other health concern that I have to monitor and take care of. And at one point, at a low point, it hit a spot where I'm like, I don't want to kill myself, but if I ever did want to, it would be really easy with my insulin. And with my struggles with depression and everything I dealt with the death of my mother and the years I went through, hiding it and trying to be the strong boy for my older sister and my dad, to not let them know how much it was hurting me, utterly failing at it. But that's what I did, and I internalized a lot of stuff and just leave it there. And I know this, I'm aware of it, and I know that I need help with it. So when I hit that point, I'm like, I'm not messing around anymore. I'd already been in counseling when we were in BC. Like I'd asked for counseling just to help and keep me on medical leave and everything, from that May through till that November when we moved. And so I reached out to our family doctor here and said I was struggling and that I felt I needed to at least try some more counseling before we start looking at maybe medication or something like that. And so I did the counseling. And right around that time was when we were getting, we found the farm and we got the offer accepted and got the mortgage laid out and all this exciting, fantastic stuff was happening. So of course I was feeling great. The anxiety had been pushed back and it was going away. And then, it was a couple of months of crazy busy trying to get us in here and get everything sorted out and get all the paperwork signed and then get everything physically moved. So, it wasn't there as much, like there's a huge bright future ahead of us. And then a few months later it was coming back, and I hit a point where I'm like, yeah, like there are days where I'm pretty much useless for Caroline. I'm not able to focus enough to help with the kids when they're making noise when she's in meetings online. So I'm not doing my job there, and I'm not getting anything done to make the farm better. I'm just maintaining the status quo barely. It was quite debilitating. And it's not, part of the problem was anxiety in this dark cloud just sitting over me. It had no definable source. It's not something where I could point to and say, well, it's the fact that my mom died when I was 9. No, it wasn't. There's nothing that was telling me exactly what was causing this. And so I went back to my doctor and, I got, talked to her about it. And she prescribed some drugs, which helped. It made it less overwhelming, but even still, it was still there in the back of my head. And Caroline was feeling it too, at this point. Like she'd been dealing with it for a couple of years at this point. And she was also feeling, kind of this anxiety and dread and everything that was just kind of hovering, just in the background in everything we're doing. And so she started looking at stuff. And she finally came across another family like us who had been eating primarily a plant-based diet, who were doing, the homesteading life. And this woman was a dietitian, right? She was trained, she knew. And like us, we were doing everything right. Like we were making sure that we were covering all our dietary bases, taking the right supplements, eating the right foods in the right amounts, trying to live a healthy lifestyle, a healthy, sustainable lifestyle, which is one of the keys for us. And they're feeling, she's reading off this litany of stuff she's seeing. The kids aren't as energetic as they used to be. And they'd been doing this for about a decade at this point. The kids aren't as energetic. They're grumpy and listless, low energy. We were definitely seeing that with Harrison. And just this kind of nameless, faithless anxiety that gets to a point where it inhibits you from just living your normal everyday life. Now, at this point, we had already added eggs back in, like we've done the videos about that, about why and how. And they had worked with dealing with, the brain fog and thinking issues that we were having. But we hadn't added anything else in. And this is something that, if you're a vegan or plant-based and you're looking it up, most of what you see is all about the great health benefits and how it's beneficial and how it's going to save the planet and how it's sustainable and blah, 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 blah. And yet everything you're buying, all the stuff all these primary protein sources you're buying are made to look just like meat, just like animal products. They're packaged in a ton of plastic and go through a ton of processes to make them into what you're cutting out of your diet. And especially now that we're living on a farm with our own chickens, eating our own eggs that we know are grown sustainably, that we know are living their best little chicken lives, happy as they can be, whether they're out in nature or on a farm. You know, they're out roaming around, doing what they want, eating bugs, hunting down their food, doing their chicken stuff, living their best lives, and giving us healthy eggs, because the eggs will be there whether we eat them or not. You know, we first got them primarily because A, we're homesteading, and B, we want to use them for generating soil and compost, right? Because they're a healthy, sustainable way to do that. And we, so we've already been doing that, and rather than wasting all these eggs or just feeding them back to the chickens or whatever, they're laying enough that we can eat some, and it's helping our brains. And so that led us, again, this woman, she's saying the solution was that they tried putting meat back on the diet. And you start small, and and she's saying this change was immediate. All of a sudden, this anxiety, this depression, all this stuff, the low energy, all the things they were experiencing were gone. So Caroline, again, has jumped way into the research as to how and why, but my experience is exactly the same. And I want to preface this by saying that when we decided to do it, I was at a point where I'm like, it can't make things worse, right? We try it and see what happens, but I wasn't expecting it to make me feel better, right? At that point, I'd given up. Like, this dark cloud was always going to be back in my head, held off by the bupropion that I'm on. And you know what, that was going to be it. And when I had high energy days, or days where I had a little bit of more emotional strength, I'd be far more effective. And there'd be days where I was barely effective at all. But it hasn't been that way. We added meat back in. It's been about a month as of this recording, and it was immediate. Like, I was not expecting this, and I've given it time just to make sure it wasn't just an effect of expectations or anything like that. That the next day, that dark cloud was gone. So it's one of those things, like, and you have to do what's best for you, and we're going to do what's best for us. But we found that adding meat back in, it's had a change on me. It's had a change on Harrison. He is far more engaged and energetic. It's had an effect on Amelia. She's far less screaming and fighting and upset, even though she's been the one who's been the biggest fight to get to try the stuff, and that's understandable. We've been eating a vegan diet pretty much since she was born, so it's weird for her. But every time she's tried something and liked it and eaten a lot of it, the next day she is a bright, happy, easygoing child. And when she gets upset or gets saying, "Oh no, we can't do that right this second," or "No, not right now," or "Let's do something else," rather than being a big explosive crying fit and tantrum, she might get upset, but she's over it in a few minutes, rather than being an hour-long kind of struggle, which it was a lot of times. And she's this bright, beautiful, happy girl for the majority of it. And it's still rough patch because she's, again, having she's not upset about the animal side, but it's just weird for her. So we're taking it easy and getting her the stuff that we know that she likes, and once she tries it, she's good. So our next step now is, like, we've just gone with the easy supermarket stuff to start with, but our next step is going to be doing more sustainable and local sources for everything, because we're in a place where we can do that, and where we can start doing our own meat birds and things like that, and even use it to help support the farm here. And it's all kind of come together. And again, like the anxiety, like, we've had some very stressful things happen. We've had family visiting for the first time in years. Now that, restrictions are eased and we're settled in. And these are things that can be especially stressful for me, with my anxiety levels, and been able to, rather than just shut down and barely be able to function, I've been fully engaged and involved in all of it. And this has been a dramatic change. and an important one, and it shows that, you know, I am absolutely convinced that veganism is a healthy option for people. I no longer believe that it's healthy long term for everybody, but I'm sure there are people, just like look back to the Mongol hordes, for instance, who were lactose tolerant when most of the world wasn't, and that was what enabled them to spread out as much as they did. There are people with genetics who would be better suited to this sort of diet than what we are. And places in the world where you get more of a plethora and variation of the amount of fresh fruit and veggies year round, where we don't get that here. That would probably make it a lot easier to maintain whatever levels of whatever it was you needed. You know, but with us here and the effects on my emotional state, it's been dramatic and eye-opening. So, you know, it's really important to kind of try to take the whole picture in. And as far as, you know, my emotional health and physical health trump whatever other causes that I'm putting in there, because if I'm broken and unable to function and take care of my family, then I'm not actually helping the planet by buying these manufactured plastic wrapped, you know, meat replacement products. Whereas, you know, I can grow a chicken in my backyard here and feed my family for a couple of nights off of it, right? Again, it's been a rough road emotionally. It's been scary at points. It has definitely been stressful. You know, but it's been a path that we walked, and I don't regret the choice we made when we made it, knowing what we knew then. And it's only through trying and experiencing that you can figure these things out. And it's definitely one of those things that you definitely kind of need to go through to really believe, if this is a choice you make as far as your dietary needs and options go, it's probably something you actually need to go through to fully appreciate it. So as I said, you know, it's not something that we can do with us, whether it's genetic, whether it's, you know, just location based. But it was already, you know, Vancouver is a prime location for this sort of diet, and with all the options there, and even so many of the companies that support that sort of thing based there. So it was never a problem with not being able to access everything we needed for our dietary needs, as well as getting the proper supplements, B12s and the omegas and all these things from an appropriate source. But whatever it is, there's something we were still missing. And maybe it's just the way our bodies process these things, right? Where it has nothing to do with the input you're putting in, but how your body takes that input and puts it in the right space in your body. It's definitely had an impact on me. It's also had an impact on, you know, my blood sugars and insulin regimen and everything like that. You know, changing over was kind of rough at the beginning, but once you kind of figure out how my blood sugar trends and everything, it's just as stable as it was on the plant-based diet. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole lot of blah from me about, you know, what I've experienced, what I've felt, and what we discovered about why. And so far, you know, a month in, that seems to be pretty accurate as to, you know, what was causing it. And again, I'm diabetic, so these things tend to happen more. It's more likely to happen to me. Just statistically, if things go bad, like I've had Bell's palsy twice in my face since 2018, since Amelia was born. And you know, and again, diabetics are more likely to have that. I've had, you know, a frozen shoulder around the same time, which was, you know, again, more likely to have it because of diabetes, right? These things just kind of happen. So maybe I was more likely to have this happen. Like, we'd been diabetic at this point about 5 years, been vegan for this point for about 5 years. I've been diabetic since I was 12. So yes, we'd been vegan and then plant-based, and then got a vegetarian the last 6 or 7 months, whatever it is, since we added the eggs back in. But it's been 5 years since I went, you know, full on. And a lot of vegans are, you know, that we found since then, it's, you know, the 5 to 10 year mark where, it starts to really have this sort of impact on your mental health. And again, we have, we found some resources, and Caroline will put up a link below for what we've seen as far as articles and other videos on this topic, if you're interested in taking a look, as well as Caroline's take on it as well. But all I can say is that, I don't regret it, because look, it's led us here, right? Like, it got us our farm. So it's been the right path for us, and that path is always evolving. And as you learn more and experience more and figure out fixes, you've got to apply them, and that's what we're doing, and we'll continue to do that. And again, making this change is also, it's opening up some doors for plans on the farm here too. So, with things we can do in our local community, as far as, continuing living this sustainable local lifestyle. If anybody is experiencing any mental health problems or anything like that, it's okay to get help. Okay, that's important to know. I felt that way since I was a child and had it myself. And whatever form that help takes, it's good. You're not alone. Everybody has problems. Some of us have them worse than others, and some of us can cope with them better, and some of us can't. And that's okay. To each their own. So, make sure that if you are experiencing problems or anything like that, don't be afraid to talk to somebody. Okay, whether it's a family member, a friend, a priest, a doctor, a licensed professional. Sometimes just an ear helps, and sometimes it can help point you in the direction you need to go. So I urge everybody to experiencing anxiety, depression, anything like that, to do that. And yeah, you have my ear as well if you need it. So anyway, thank you for listening to me blather on about this, and keep trucking on. Thanks for spending your time with me today. Keep following along with us as we learn and grow here. And yeah, thanks. Have a good one.